Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Isaac Christopher Lubogo. Today, I want to talk about mavericks. You probably want to find out why people hate you and the things that you do. Mavericks are basically people who think and act independently, often in unorthodox or even unconventional ways, and their ideas or contributions may not be initially accepted, but later they can lead to significant changes in terms of innovations or output that they did. So, listen, the duality of pioneers from persecution to posterity in the fabric of human progress. Some of the things that I would like to comprehend today. So, ladies and gentlemen, my esteemed friends and fellow seekers of insight, even as I try to explore and discuss a profound and intriguing aspect of human history, the paradox of society's treatment of innovators and pioneers. It's a story that has actually played out countless times through the annals of history. Brilliant minds driven by passion and vision have often faced adversity, hatred, rejection during their lifetimes, only to be celebrated, revered, and even remembered after a long time when they are dead. So as I delve into this enigmatic phenomenon, I will unravel the complex dynamics that underlie it. I will examine certain reasons why society has a penchant of resisting change and rejecting new ideas. I will explore the role of fear, prejudice, and even the preservation of existing power structures in shaping my narrative. So in this process, I will pay homage to those who have actually borne the weight of rejection and criticism, often to the sake of progress and the advancement of human knowledge, from people like Galileo's struggle within the Catholic Church to Alan Turing in terms of persecution for his sexuality. I will try to talk about tribulations faced by these remarkable individuals. But perhaps most importantly, I'll reflect on what this historical pattern reveals about our collective nature. What does it tell us about our resistance to the unfamiliar and our capacity to change our perspectives? What lessons can we draw from this paradox that may inform our interactions with innovations and pioneers of today? So, ladies and gentlemen, join me today as I navigate the paradox of humanity's treatment of visionaries, examining the pains they endure and the eventual recognition they receive, and in doing so, shedding light on the facet of our history that continue to shape the course of progress and innovation. Listen, my friends, there are quite a number of several factors that can contribute to this. And one of them is the fact that you are an innovative thinker, what they call innovative thinking. Many of these individuals are usually ahead of their time, and their groundbreaking ideas or inventions challenge what they call established norms, leading to resistance and rejection from society or even authorities. Number two, nonconformity. Some of them, or some of us, or some of you are nonconformists, refusing to adhere to what they call societal norms and expectations, which often result in rejection and even persecution. Number three, sometimes what they call social and even cultural context. The time and place in which you may be living plays a crucial role. For instance, in terms of historical context, it's perhaps in terms of societal norms or political climate that influences how your ideas or actions are actually perceived and even received. Number four, the aspect that has to do with what they call personal struggle. Sometimes you face personal struggles from mental health issues, financial hardships, and such discrimination based on factors like gender or even sexuality sometimes is another challenge. Number five, sometimes you have to do what they call controversial views. Expressing your unconventional or controversial view often lead to what they call societal backlash in terms of persecution, as seen, for example, in the case of Galileo or Giordano or even Bruno or even Alan Turing. I'll explain what they did and some of the challenges that they went through. And then number six, humanitarian efforts is another one. Figures like Harriet Tubman and Anne Frank faced adversity because of their efforts to help others and even challenge what they call oppressive systems, including the likes of Nelson Mandela. Sometimes, the times when they hadn't recognized what he did. So this phenomenon of individuals who face adversity, criticism, or even hatred during their lifetime can only be celebrated in terms of their death sometimes, and this can be attributed, as I say, to quite a number of complex factors. and the biggest one being the resistance to change. People often resist new ideas in changes in terms of the social core. So innovators and pioneers challenge, what they call established norms, which can lead to fear and rejection. And then some people are afraid of what they call the fear of the unknown. Human nature tends to fear what is unfamiliar or different. And so visionaries and unconventional thinkers can actually be seen as a threat to the existing order. And then there's what we call a threat to power structures. Figures who actually change what they call established power structures, such as maybe the state or even religious institutions, may actually be perceived as threats, leading to what they call persecution and even suppression of your ideas. So my friend, you are not alone. You're part of this group that we call mavericks or innovators. Listen, the use of society norms, the prevailing societal norm and values at a given time play a significant role. What is considered racial or unacceptable in one era may actually be embraced in another, and that's another challenge. And then another issue that has to do with that is what they call misunderstandings. Sometimes complex or even unconventional ideas can actually be misunderstood or misinterpreted, leading to fear and distrust and even rejection. And then there are issues that have to do with persecution of non-conformists. Those who do not conform to societal expectations or norms can actually face discrimination and even marginalization. So my friend, I'm preparing you because you've been wondering, you've been rejected, you've been isolated, you've been what? Phased out. Then there's an aspect called inertia. Change is often met with what we call inertia and resistance. It takes time for society to accept and adapt new ideas, and even when they eventually prove to be beneficial. Sometimes because of that aspect of inertia, some people take time to acclimatize or to accept it. And then there's what we call revisionism. Sometimes history is revised as people reevaluate the significance of certain figures and their contributions. Right now we're having a challenge in terms of the Israel-Palestine issue. People now begin to understand things on a different perspective. I'm not going to that. Listen to our YouTube where I made that discourse in terms of the challenge between Israel and Palestine. But perhaps even the stigmatization of the black man in terms of the ideology that for about 100 and something years, the Constitution of the US had designated a black man to be 3/4 of a human being. Those are questions that we ask today, whether or not the world has now understood and undertaken the fact that these are people and they're human beings. So these individuals or pioneers or advocates of change, or the world sometimes is not ready to accept their ideas or actions. So it's a reminder that progress and innovation often comes with resistance and struggle, and the enduring legacies have yet or sometimes take time to be recognized or even celebrated. I'm going to give a few examples in terms of historical figures, including those that I may have talked about earlier. But let me begin by a guy called Nikola Tesla. Some of you know Nikola Tesla probably came up with over 300 and something patents. Now, this brilliant inventor struggled with financial difficulties and died in a relatively obscurity and poverty-stricken times and in New York City in 1943. Then the Wright brothers, what they call Orville and Wilbur Wright, these aviation pioneers faced skepticism and even legal battles before they actually gained recognition for their contributions in terms of flight. What we're enjoying today is predominantly because of what they did. Another guy is called Galileo Galilei, the astronomer who actually faced opposition from the Catholic Church and was actually tried by the Roman Catholic Inquisition in 1633, spending his years under house arrest. Then Jesus of Nazareth, in the accounts in terms of the New Testament, Jesus experienced solitude and suffering, ultimately facing crucifixion. And then people like even Peter, by the way, Peter of the Bible, who was actually crucified opposite what Jesus had undergone. Then like guys like Socrates, the ancient Greek philosopher, was actually sentenced to death by drinking poison in 399 BC after being accused of corrupting the youth and denying the gods of Athens. There's a guy called Hypatia of Alexandria, a mathematician and philosopher in ancient Alexandria. She was actually brutally murdered in 415 AD, possibly due to her pagan belief and prominence at a time of religious conflict. So such figures, faced a range of challenges, and their lives marked by controversy and adversity, without necessarily emphasizing their good lives. It reminds me of the song by Chameleon, Basimo Genze, I'm going to give you some other people who probably you may, get to know. Alan Turing, for example, this gentleman was a brilliant mathematician and computer scientist, was actually persecuted for his homosexuality tendencies in 1950 and subjected to chemical castration. He died in 1954. His contributions to computer science were not fully recognized during his lifetime. And I'm not advocating for homosexuality. I'm just saying that sometimes because of the divergent views that people have, they may have those challenges, in spite of the challenge they may have in terms of the positive contribution to society. Hypatia of Hypatia, the female mathematician and philosopher in ancient Greece faced discrimination due to her gender, and which was tragically murdered in 415 AD during a period of religious conflict. Then there's a guy called Giordano Bruno. Giordano Bruno, the Italian philosopher, was actually burned at the stake in 1600 for his unorthodox views, which included the idea of infinity, an infinite universe, and the rejection of certain Catholic doctrines. We have another one called Alan Lomax. He was a folklorist and a musicologist who faced controversy and criticism for his fieldwork in documenting traditional music, which was sometimes seen as culturally insensitive. So in terms of discrimination or even death due to their beliefs or actions or even circumstances, it's important that these guys face challenges and encountered a lot of issues during their lifetimes. I just emphasize that in terms of Hypatia, this was an ancient Greek philosopher and mathematician. They faced discrimination because of her gender, and she was brutally murdered in 415 AD, as I said. And then there's another one who many of you probably may have got to know, especially those of you who do constitutional law and history. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the influential French philosopher and writer who faced criticism and rejection from society for his controversial ideas, such as those expressed in the social contract. Those of you who are doing jurisprudence or no jurisprudence probably comprehend that in the video. There's another one called Sylvia Plath, the American poet and novelist who struggled with mental health issues throughout her life and ultimately died by suicide in 1963. So sometimes these lone walks of people, the invaders, the dreamers, or the thinkers of tomorrow. I can't emphasize Alan Turing, the mathematician. I just told you about. He was a computer scientist who was persecuted for his belief. I just mentioned Galileo Galilei. Many of you remember that. We used to read about that guy in history, in primary and even secondary. The Italian astronomer who faced censure and house arrest for the support of his heliocentric model of the solar system, which actually conflicted with the prevailing geocentric view of the Catholic Church. It's unfortunate that even so, in spite of the physical discrimination and mental health issues or even societal rejection, these guys were, many of them, like Nikola Tesla, unfortunately died when they are not even affluent financially. We could talk about Alan Lomax, who, as I said, sometimes his arguments were seen as culturally insensitive. We could argue Ludwig van Beethoven, Ludwig van Beethoven, the renowned composer. The pronunciation is, some people call it Beethoven or Beethoven, the renowned composer who struggled with hearing loss and various personal hardships, including financial difficulties. And then we could argue in terms of Vincent van Gogh, the post-impressionist, the painter who actually suffered from mental issues leading to periods of depression and ultimately, causing tragic suicide. Even here we had a popular footballer, I remember, who had certain mental issues. We could argue in terms of Edgar Allan Poe, the American writer who faced financial instability and personal tragedies, and his life was actually marked by struggles with alcohol and even emotional instability. And so I'm not justifying that is their responsible lives, but the fact that sometimes they are celebrated after death. Charlotte Bronte, the English novelist, also known as Jane Eyre, who faced gender-based challenges as female authors often wrote, under what they call pseudonyms and even faced limited opportunities. So I'm not justifying in terms of the fact that some of the things like alcohol or perhaps health issues may have to do with them particularly, but sometimes what society faced them to undergo because of the ideas that we were propounding at the time. Alan Kurdi, for example, a young Syrian refugee whose tragic drowning in 2015 became a symbol of the refugee crisis, highlighting the challenges faced by many displaced individuals. We could talk about Harriet Tubman, the African American abolitionist and underground railroad conductor, faced numerous dangers and hardship while even helping enslaved people to escape to freedom. How about people like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? Yeah, we may have celebrated him during his time, but perhaps more recognized now that even has a whole, celebrate what do you call it, a whole day in America where publicly declared to remember him. How about Malcolm X, or other people called Malcolm Kelito? How about Anne Frank, the Jewish girl who actually wrote a diary during the Holocaust, facing persecution by the Nazis and tragically died in the concentration camp? How about Nelson Mandela? How about Desmond Tutu, for example? In Africa, we may have those who are unsung heroes, and people like Julius Nyerere, people like in India, Mahatma Gandhi, people like Louis Farrakhan, people like Khalid Mohammed, Dr. Khalid Mohammed, people like Gaddafi. All those individuals whose times and actions may not have been comprehended fully during their times when they were alive, and the ideas were probably fought and sent to the annals of dustbins of sorts. But when we realize what the contribution that they have on society today, we can only look and wonder at the great things that they did. So it's not uncommon that what you may be going through may be a challenge. People like Gregor Mendel was an Australian scientist known for his work on pea plants, where he actually discovered the laws of inheritance, which laid the foundation to modern genetics. His groundbreaking research was actually largely ignored during his lifetime, but it became widely accepted after his death. So, as I said, sometimes Basimo gains there. That's something I want you to comprehend, that don't look so much in what people are uploading you now, concentrate on your vision. Ignaz Semmelweis, for example, a Hungarian physician, was the pioneer of what they call antiseptic procedures in medical practice. He proposed hand washing and to avoid spread of infections. His work was rejected then. Later, it's now considered as a development in modern hygiene practices in medicine. Alfred Wegener was a German meteorologist and geophysicist. This guy introduced the theory of continental drift in the early 20th century, suggesting that continents move over geological time. He faced substantial opposition, but his work eventually contributed to the development of the theory of plate tectonics, what they call tectonics. Yeah. You may also want to, find out from Rachel Carson. Yeah. It reminds me of Ben Carson, also another one. But this Carson was also an American marine biologist and author who wrote what they call The Silent Spring, a groundbreaking book that writes concerns about environmental impacts in terms of pesticides, particularly DDT. Her work was met with resistance from chemical companies that played a crucial role in terms of modern environmental movements. I know we have transcended that a little bit in terms of improvements of sorts. How about people like Baruch Spinoza, the Dutch philosopher's works, including things like ethics, which were deemed hereditary by religious authorities during her lifetime. However, his ideas on ethics and on God and even human nature greatly influenced modern philosophy. We may also think about people like Ludwig Boltzmann. Boltzmann was an Austrian physicist who actually formulated statistical mechanics, which was actually not widely accepted during his lifetime. And his work on the molecular basis of what they call thermodynamics laid the foundation of the field of statistical physics as we know it today. I just told you about Ben Carson, the guy who wrote Gifted Hands. How many times were they neglected? Even the likes of or Albert Einstein, who were considered retarded at a certain time. Many of these guys, as I said, may have had a lot of struggles in their lifetimes, but it's very important for you that you may be a maverick. In spite of the things that you may be doing, the world may not comprehend. You may be a little bit ahead of your time. So it's very important to understand that you may face skepticism, you may face resistance, and maybe later your work may be recognized, and that should not worry you. I choose to believe that many times I don't choose to wait for the applause of people, but focus on what I'm doing. Vincent van Gogh was another painter who struggled with mental illness and lived relatively, an obscure and poverty life. His impressionist in terms of art, including the night, is actually celebrated worldwide. We have another fella called Emily Dickinson. The American poet's works were actually mostly unpublished during her lifetime, and she lived in relative seclusion. And her unique style and insight into human emotions have actually since shaped, made her one of the most famous poets in American literature. For example, there's another one called Emily Bront, the English novelist who wrote that novel called Wuthering Heights. Remember, was met with mixed reviews during her lifetime. It's now considered a classical in terms of English literature. And those of you who again are jurists or who comprehend jurisprudence, there's a guy called Karl Marx, the German philosopher and economist, who actually faced criticism and opposition for his ideas on communism and the working class. His work on the Communist Manifesto laid the foundation for the revolutionary changes in terms of politics and even economics. And then there's another one called Frida Kahlo, was a Mexican artist who faced personal hardship in terms of physical pain, which greatly influenced her art, her works, and characterized by self-portraits and even what they call surrealism, and they are now celebrated worldwide. You could also think about Mark Twain, what they call the Samuel Clemens, the American author's satirical, novel, The Adventures of Huckleberry film, which was initially met with controversy, but is now recognized as one of the greatest American novels. So, my friends, as I said, these individuals, despite initial doubt or opposition, left what they call a lasting impact on the world of art, literature, philosophy, or social, or even science, or mechanics, name it. So their works continue to influence and even inspire people today in terms of the global ranking, as we may argue. I could go on and bring out people. I know I mentioned something to do with Socrates. Some people call him Socrates, but perhaps pronunciation. But this guy lived from 469 to 399 BC, the ancient Greek philosopher. Socrates is known for his Socratic method of questioning, which aimed to stimulate critical thinking, and was actually sentenced to death by drinking poison, what they call hemlock, in 399 BC. Socrates faced charges of corrupting the youth and impiety for his philosophical inquiries that challenged the traditional beliefs. And so, my friends, the argument here is that I'm speaking to your soul, mind, and body, that you may be rejected, you may be opposed, you may be fought on and on for noble ideas, for groundbreaking ideas, and the world may not comprehend exactly what you're going through. But listen, you're not alone, and this is not a new thing to you or to anybody. All you need to do is to comprehend and embrace yourself and have the tenacity and resilience to believe in yourself and keep moving. Yeah, keep moving. There's a guy who said a wonderful proverb one time that he was walking in the company of a gentleman, and the guy said, "Wait a minute, man, the storm is coming. We're going to be phased off. We're going to be swept off." And the guy, "Don't worry," said, "Don't worry, I am the storm." So sometimes you have to just tell to those guys, like, "Listen, I am the storm." There's a guy called Baruch Spinoza who lived in 1632 to 1677. This Dutch philosopher was actually excommunicated from Amsterdam synagogue in 1656 for his so-called heretical views, including his patheticist beliefs. And his notable work called The Ethics was actually published posthumously and had a profound influence on modern philosophy. Yeah, I mean, I could argue Immanuel Kant, for example, who lived in 1724 to 804, a philosopher known for his groundbreaking work in what they call the Critique of Pure Reason. Initially met with mixed reviews in terms of his work, but later the work transformed modern philosophy. Okay, and he lived relatively solitary life, and where he actually wrote extensively in terms of metaphysics and epistemology as well. And then there's a guy who actually was rejected for doing a PhD thesis by his university and professors, and they said this can't make anything, and sent out of the university. And later, I think it was from Zimbabwe, and later he actually went and wrote a book out of that rejected thesis. The book became a bestseller, and then 10 years down the road, the university calls him to give him an honorary award, as a doctorate in terms of honoris causa, and he refused. He just sent his wife to go and represent him because he had been rejected the first time. So it's not uncommon that people who may not believe in you today, who may not comprehend your ideas today, may jump on your head and abuse you left, right, and center. But I'll remind them of this quotation that as long as they can say anything, they can mudsling your name, they can paint it black, they can paint it yellow, blue, red. They can do anything they want, but as long as they spell your name right. So it's very important that you keep moving, yeah, and you keep focusing, and you keep burning the midnight oil, like Dr. King used to tell us. So some of you who wait for validation or for what, applause of people who even warned, Scripture said, be careful when people take you so much highly and celebrate you. Yeah, you have to be extremely careful. Sometimes people have that deception or keeping up appearances. They did that to Jesus, remember, when he was actually celebrated, when he was going to what? To Jerusalem, and they, on a donkey, and they put clothes around and jubilated and said, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, and the next day they were crucifying him. So it's not uncommon that some of your ideas, as I say, or some of your dreams, or some of your giftings may not be comprehended today. But listen, as I said, your applause or your jubilation shouldn't be focused on what individuals are saying. You should be focused on what God has put in your heart, because listen, you are only an original of yourself. You're not a photocopy. You are an original. God has already made another, so don't copy the other person. God has already made the other person. Yeah, be careful. If you argue in terms of Bruno's unyielding stance led to his conviction, for example, and he was actually eventually banned. Think about that in a stake. People like Peter, again, because of their convictions, were actually crucified upside down. I'm told even thrown into what? Into drums and acid-like stuff. So there are many things that you are likely to go through because of your ideologies, because you are not normal in terms of the contemplation of what other people may see as normal. But that's not a validation. That's not a justification to believe that what they are doing is actually right. As I said, sometimes it may take time. I think Steve Jobs was right when he said that he came up with quite a number of inventions, but he said, I cannot release them to the world because the world is not ready to receive some of the things. Yeah, Galileo, we all talk about Galileo. In 1633, for example, he was tried by Roman Catholic Inquisition for charges of heresy for his defense of the heliocentric model, which contradicted the prevailing geocentric view held by the church. He was found guilty and placed under house arrest for the remainder of his entire life. Galileo's trial and persecution actually reflect a prominent example of historical figures who were both hated for their ideas and even tried for heresy due to their specific scientific beliefs. And his work later laid the foundation in terms of modern astronomy and even physics. Yeah, it's very important that you comprehend that you are not alone, as I said. Another interesting guy was the Dutch philosopher Baruch Spinoza. Spinoza was actually excommunicated, as I argued, from Amsterdam synagogue in 1656 for his heretical views, including his pantheist beliefs. His works were seen as a threat to traditional religious orthodoxy, and he faced significant opposition from religious authorities. Yeah, and yet Spinoza's most notable works that had to do with ethics was actually published posthumously, and his ideas, which challenged the conventional religious and philosophical beliefs, were actually considered radical during his time. He was both hated by religious authorities, subjected to condemnation due to his unorthodox views, making him a significant figure in terms of historical aspects in terms of philosophy. Spinoza's philosophical contributions basically laid a groundwork for modern philosophy, especially in the areas of metaphysics and even ethics. So it's very important to understand some of these challenges. But listen, there is a phrase that I would like you to comprehend, those you mavericks who are here. It's called solidum facit pacem appellet. Solidum facit pacem appellet, which is often attributed to Roman historical senator who was called Tacitus. The quote is associated with his work called Agricola, where he was actually critical of the Roman Empire's military campaigns, particularly in the conquest of Britain. Yeah, and his quote basically, in terms of what Tacitus expresses his disapproval of the Roman Empire's tactics, where they would actually conquer and subdue lands, leaving them in a state of dissolution. Subsequently, they would actually label the conquered regions as pax, what they call peace, under the Roman control. So this phrase basically highlighted what Tacitus' critical examination of the Roman Empire's actions and policies during his time, revealing the stark contrast between what they call harsh realities of conquest and the propaganda used to depict what they call a peaceful outcome. The argument of what I said is what they say: they make a desert and call it peace. They make desolate and call it peace. It's often associated with Roman historian and senator, as I told, that guy called Tacitus. And Tacitus, known for his historical and even political writings, particularly Agricola and even Germania, made this observation in his work, Agricola, where he actually describes the Roman conquest of Britain. So sometimes these guys will do those things to you, but keep moving. As I said, the quote reflects criticism of the then military empire in terms of the conquer and subjugation of lands, leaving them in dissolution, and they portray religions as peaceful. So it's very important that these writings have a lot of impact in terms of lessons they impute on our minds, that sometimes people will do that in terms of suspicions, conquers, and then they end up thinking that they've actually made peace. So it's important to understand that people will use anything to justify their actions. Yeah, and we have to be very careful, even as we live in this world, because the dictates of the time, depending on who is pulling the shots, then may actually label you a reject of sorts because of your ideas or because of your ideologies, and even try to discriminate or even perhaps erase you from planet Earth. Cicero, the Roman statesman, is also known for a number of influential quotes. One of his famous statements in what they call Solus Populis Suprema Lex Esto, which translates that let the welfare of the people be the supreme law. The idea has actually influenced political thought in terms of the concept of the common good. I would also want to argue another, and that's where I'm going, in terms of Seneca, what they call a Stoic philosopher. Seneca made many thought-provoking statements. One of his notable quotes is what they call vivere militare est, or what they call to live is to fight. And this reflects the Stoic principles in terms of resiliency and the idea that life is constant battle against adversity. And that's what I want you to take away. I will also remind you of Livy. Livy was a Roman historian. Livy is known for his monumental work called Abba Cardina, from the founding of the city, in which he actually recorded Roman history. He is often challenged prevailing narratives and beliefs in the time with his historical accounts. And then I will also remind you about a guy called Pliny the Elder. Pliny was also a Roman author and a naturalist, and he's famous for his work, what they call Naturis Historia, what they call natural history. And he made the observation that ex Africa semper aliqui nova. There is always something new coming out of Africa, reflecting the idea that there is always something to learn and to discover in the world. And that's what I'm saying for you today. I want those quotes from ancient historians and thinkers to have a lasting impact in terms of philosophy, in terms of politics, in terms of your understanding of the world today, as we know it to do. So, as I said, you may go through challenges in terms of your norms, in terms of your beliefs, in terms of the times that are prevailing, but listen, you are about to shape the world of tomorrow. Keep moving. I'll tell you another one, what they call Vox Populi, Vox Dei, which is a Latin phrase translating to mean the voice of the people is the voice of God. This quote basically reflects the idea that the will of the people is a powerful and authoritative force, and has actually been used to emphasize the importance of democracy in terms of public opinion and the voice of the majority in terms of decision. So sometimes the majority may actually be a minority. So it doesn't matter, as long as one person believes in you. Remember, Vox Populi, Vox Dei. So this phrase, although not attributed to a single ancient historian or thinker, basically embodies the concept that has influenced or should influence your political thought in terms of the development of your democratic ideologies, and emphasizing the idea of a collective or single voice in terms of governance and decision making. Yeah, and then I'll also argue in terms of what they call the Cobra effect. This was something that happened. It described a situation where, for example, an attempted solution to a problem makes the problem worse. Yeah, and the term sometimes is attributed to what they call the antidote of the time in terms of the British rule in India. And the story goes that there were too many cobras in Delhi, New Delhi by then. So a bounty was actually placed on cobra skins to encourage people to kill them. So initially this led to a decrease in the cobra population. However, people soon began to breed cobras for their skins to claim the bounty. And when the government discovered this, the bounty program was actually abandoned, and the cobra breeders released their snakes, resulting into even an even bigger, larger, cobra population. So the argument here is that the cobra effect illustrates how sometimes well-intended, policies or solutions can actually sometimes have unintended or even undesirable consequences, and it has become widely used metaphor in terms of economics, politics, and even other fields to highlight the need to carefully consider the potential repercussions and actions and policies. So be careful, some of you guys who think you can oppress, reject, and muzzle people who have mavericks. So I'll give you another phrase, what they call interferentum ad ferem competentum ad pedition, where it says to kill the doctor and save the craftsman, which was actually associated with a Roman emperor named Vespasian. So according to his historical account, Vespasian was actually, taxing public uriners in ancient Rome, and was informed by his son Titus that the urine tax imposed by his government was actually criticized as oppressive and even unfair. So Vespasian then allegedly held a coin in his nose and actually commented that the money could actually be derived from urine, leading to the saying that has actually been translated in various ways, including Pashunian and Olet, money does not stink. So regardless of what you are doing, regardless of how you're gaining your money, please remember, money does not stink. As I said, the phrase is a reflection of the Vespasian way of angling in terms of revenue collection, and it's basically help you to comprehend, as I said, the pragmatic and sometimes unorthodox measures that are employed by people, including rulers, to generate income to address certain physical issues in terms of what we do today. So regardless of what you're doing, keep doing it. As I said, the sky is no longer the limit. I'm speaking to your soul, spirit, body, and mind. I'm going to tell you some good, beautiful things that come out of some of the books that I would like you to look at. Like, for example, The Art of War by Sun Tzu. In terms of the lesson, it will teach you the strategy and tactics for conflict and conflict in terms of competition, emphasizing the importance of understanding how your enemy and using intelligence and in terms of deception. And I'll give you a particular quote which says all fair is actually based on deception, from that book called The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Another wonderful one is the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. In terms of the lesson, it will help you explore the dynamics of power and even provide strategies in terms of gaining and maintaining power, often drawing from historical examples. For example, a popular quote from that is that, for example, when you show yourself to the world and display your talents, you naturally stir all kinds of resentment, envy, and other manifestations of insecurity. You cannot spend your life worrying about the petty feelings of others. And isn't that what we're talking about, my friends? That's exactly what we're talking about to you, the maverick, my friend. Listen, there's also another one called The Godfather by Mario Puzo. The lesson here is that a novel that explores themes of power, loyalty, and even consequences of one's actions, particularly within the context of what they call organized crime. The popular one there is that I'm going to make him offer, he can't refuse. Look for that. It's going to help you comprehend some of the things. There's another one called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. The lesson there is it provides principles in terms of achieving what they call financial successes and personal growth, emphasizing the power of positive thinking and even goal setting. And the popular quote is there, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can actually achieve. And then there's another beautiful one called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And the lesson here is that contrast in terms of the financial philosophies of two dads, one focused on job security and the other on financial education and entrepreneurship. You may want to look out for the quote, the single most powerful asset we have is our mind. If it is trained well, it can actually create enormous wealth. Which reminds me, one of these days we're going to do some submissions in terms of the art of remembering everything. Look for that book by John Fowler, The Art of Remembering Everything, Moonwalking with Einstein. And then you may also want to talk about The Power of Habits by Charles Duhigg. And it explores the science of habits and how they can actually be changed with insights into personal and even organizational transformation. I'll give you a quote from there which says that this is the real power of habit. The insight of your habits are what you choose them to be. So as I said, these books offer unique lessons in terms of insights, in terms of particular quotes that often escapulate the core principles that they convey. And I'm going to add a little bit of some others and still give you some notable quotes, so that as you live, as you begin to fight, as you begin to move, listen, you look back and say, guess what? I am the storm. You're not afraid of the storm. You're moving on, you're phasing on, you're walking regardless. Listen, this is what they call the Lean Startup by Eric Ries. And the lesson here is focusing on what they call building and growing successful startups by using principles of learned thinking, for example, and iterative development, and even validating learning, what they call validated learning. And the quote there is that the only way to win is to learn faster than anyone else. I think Dr. King made it right. He said, he who starts behind in the race has forever remained behind, or run faster than the man in front. There's another one called To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. The lesson there is to explore themes in terms of racial injustice, moral growth through the eyes of a young girl in the American society. The beautiful quote that comes from there is that you never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it. Yeah, Dr. King several taught us about some of the things. There's another one called The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And the lesson here is that philosophical novel that actually explores personal legends in terms of destiny and the pursuit of one's dreams and desires. A notable quote that comes from there is that people learn early in their lives what is their reason for being, say the old man with a certain bitterness. Maybe that's why they give up so early too. So I'm just giving you some of these snippets so that you can comprehend what we're talking about. There's another one called The Universal Dilemma by Christendom. The lesson there is that it discusses what they call disruptive innovation and how established companies can lose their market leadership by not embracing change. Yeah, a particular quote that is eminent there is that it's often the very business practices that have been the key to their past successes that become the key to their failure. So you need to be careful when you're looking at some of the things. I'll give you another one in terms of what they call the culture in the right. Okay, by J.D. Salinger. And the lesson here is that it explores the themes of what they call alienation and identity, and the challenges of growing up through experiences of a teenager named Holden Caulfield. A popular quote is there is, don't ever tell anybody anything. If you do, you start missing everybody. So think about some of those comprehensions. As I said, most of the things should and must leave a lasting impact on you as a listener, as a reader, and they should continue to shape your way of thinking about business, for example, about society, about your personal growth, and about how you're going to change the world tomorrow. Listen, the world is only waiting for you. The world is only waiting for you. I think it was Dr. Miles Monroe who said that many people die when they are not empty. Try to die when you are empty. It reminds me of our book, Treatise to Marlon Friend, the Attorney at Law. One of these days we'll probably go through it. It has beautiful quotations, beautiful experiences. You may find it at lubogo.org or suigenerislaw.com. Another one is The Future Lawyer, for example. It also has a lot of information that has to do with bracing yourself for the future, but also in terms of, especially for the lawyers. I'll give another one in terms of an example called The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. It examines how, for example, small actions and even events that can lead to significant changes, often reaching what they call a tipping point, where they become influential. A popular quote there could be, the tipping point is that magic moment when an idea or trend or even a social behavior crosses the threshold, tips and even spreads like a wildfire. Yeah, there's a gentleman who said nothing can stop an idea whose time has actually come. I'll give you another one, Animal Farm by your guy, George Orwell. Remember, the lesson is that analogical novel that actually criticizes totalitarianism in terms of corruption, influence, and power. And using Animal Farm represents various aspects of our society. And the popular one is that all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Yeah, I'll not tell you the other one. The one that comes out of that, the one that was popular said by let me leave that. Let's talk about The Grapes and Wrath by John Steinbeck. It explores the hardship of the Great Depression, for example, and the plight of migrant workers, highlighting the themes in terms of social injustice and resilience. And the popular quote that comes there is that I've done my damnedest to rip a reader's nerves to rags. I don't want him satisfied. Yeah, and those are strong. How about if you argue in terms of what they call the Devil's Dictionary by Ambrose Bierce? The lesson is that there's a satirical lexicon that humanity defines or redefines words to comment on various aspects of society, politics, and even human nature. A popular quote there is that our civilization and our Republican form of government intelligence is so highly honored that it's rewarded by exemption from the care of the office. Yeah. So as I said, you just can't. I think what Albert Einstein would say, the literate of the 21st century is not the one who cannot read or write, but one who can not learn, relearn, or learn, unlearn, and relearn. Yeah. So you have to understand that many of these, as I just pointed out, influential books to motivate you, to encourage you when you're walking, when you're moving that solely lonely walk, where you feel rejected, where you feel your works are not being comprehended, even appreciated. even by the very people who are perhaps sometimes closest to you. You just have to believe in yourself. Yeah, you just have to understand that sometimes the impetus to excel is within you. There's another interesting one, which is Lawyers and Other Repels by Jess M. Brayler. Yeah, and the lesson here is a humorous take on the legal profession, providing antidotes in terms of insights into the world of lawyers, for example. And the popular quote that comes here is that the practice of law is changing as rapidly as any business in America, for example. So much that I want to see only rule of law, new lawyer. So prepare to change or be prepared to fail. Prepare to fail. So you have to understand the contemplation, the changing landscape. There's another one called The Devil's Advocate by Maurice L. West. The lesson here is that this never delves into a complex or world of what they call Vatican or ethics or even moral dilemmas. So as a lawyer, for example, is assigned to investigate a potential saint's past. A popular quote there is, "Justice is the most subtle art of all." Yeah, I'll give you another one, what they call Freakonomics by Stephen J. Levitt and Stephen J. Dabner. And the lesson here is that it explores the hidden sides of what they call economics and human behavior, revealing the surprising, connections between seemingly unrelated phenomena. A popular quote that comes there is, "Morality, it could be argued, represents the way that people would like the world to work, whereas economics represents how it actually does work." Yeah, interesting arguments right over there. So as I said, this is not for the feeble-hearted. This is serious business, my friend. I'll give you another one that had to do with The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. The lesson here is a guide to personal growth in terms of self-improvement, emphasizing the importance of discipline, love, understanding in terms of leading a fulfilling life. Yeah, the popular quote there is, "Life is difficult. This is great truth, one of the greatest truth. That is a great truth because once we truly see this truth, we transcend it." Yeah, so I'm laboring to speak to your soul, but by invoking a lot of literature and invoking a lot of substantive writings that have been written by great men and great women. And so the argument here is to see how we can, influence your soul, spirit, and body, and not to give up and to brace yourself. As I said, to look on the side and say, "I am the storm." So don't be afraid of the storm. There's another one by Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. And the lesson there was a dystopian novel that actually explores the impact of technology in terms of conformity and a consumer-driven society on individual freedoms and even identity. And the quote there could be that, "But I don't want comfort, I want God, I want poetry, I want real danger, I want freedom, I want goodness, I want sin." You just have to comprehend and understand some of the things when you read that, then you may get better understanding of what I'm talking about. There's another one called The Stranger by Albert Camus. Yeah, or Albert Camus. It's an existential novel that actually examines the absurdity of life and the detachment of the protagonist in terms of Musset from societal norms and even emotions. And the quote there could be, "I may not have been sure about what really did interest me, but I was absolutely sure about what didn't." Yeah, and another interesting one that was actually introduced to me by my son in King's College Budo is called Atlas Shrugged by Aaron Brand. The lesson here is a philosophical novel that actually champions individualism in terms of free market capitalism, emphasizing the importance of rational self-interest and even personal achievement. And the quote here is that the question isn't who is going to let me, it's who is going to stop me. The question isn't who is going to let me, it is who is going to stop me. So thank you, Israel YK Lubogo, for that impression on me. And then listen, there's also something that I've got to do with 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And the lesson here is the magical realist in terms of the novel that explores the cynical nature of history and the impact of family and solitude in terms of Budia family in Mercado. And the quote here is that, "Tell me, I want him to remember that a person is not a bad." Listen, I could go on and on, but I cannot exhaust everything, but let me just do my best to give you some. There's Interpretation of Dreams by Sigmund Freud. You probably know about him. Freud's groundbreaking work on what they call psychoanalysis and the interpretation of dreams, diverging into human psyche and even unconscious desires. And the popular quote there was, "Dreams are the royal road to the unconscious." Think about that. So as I said, these books basically cover a wide range of themes, including individualism, realism, psychology, and it should definitely have a lasting impact on you in terms of comprehending your understanding or comprehension of issues that as we understand them today. Yeah, I will also remember books like The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, in terms of exploring the so-called American dream in terms of wealth, in terms of moral decency during the 1920s, through the story of Jay Gatsby in the pursuit of love and success. And the popular quote there was that, so we beat on boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. You may also want to look at The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Yeah, and the lesson there was that a polycaptic novel that actually examines the bonds between a father and the son as they navigate, a bleak and dangerous world. And the popular quote was that you forget what you want to remember, and you remember what you want to forget. Think about that. Listen, there's also another interesting one called The Art of Happiness by Dahlia Lama and Howard Cutler. And the lesson was that it offers basically insights into achieving lasting happiness and even well-being, blending what they call Eastern wisdom with Western psychology. And the popular quote was that the purpose of our lives is to be happy. Who doesn't want that? Yeah, go find that song. I don't want to be happy. Remember that song? There's another one called The Second Sex by Simone de Beauvoir. The lesson there was that in terms of the feminist philosophy that explores what they call social, psychological, and historical even factors shaping women's identity and oppression. A quote popular was that one is not born but rather becomes a woman. Think about that. Incredible stuff right over there. There's also another one that has to do with The Road to Serfdom by Friedrich Hayek. And the lesson here was that it argues against what they call government control and centralized planning, advocating for economics and even immediate freedom. The popular quote there was that the curious task of economics is to demonstrate to men how little they really know about what they imagine they can do in terms of design. Think about that. As I say, we could have quite a number of themes in terms of wealth, in terms of happiness, in terms of identity, which reminds me of our book, Suigeneris, the Gospel according to Suigeneris. Many people may not understand, but it has super important information in terms of a quote for you every day, in terms of almost everything that you may going through life. You may want to pull it out and just find it at lubogo.org or suigenerisblowup.com. There's another one again that reminds me of again my young man, my son, who again introduced that book to me called Atomic Habits by James Clear, which focuses on the power of small habits and how they actually lead to significant personal and even professional transformation. And the popular quote that comes there is that you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Think about that. So again, thank you YK Israel from King's College Bujo for giving me that information. There's another one called The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. Yeah, it's basically a guide to personal growth and self-improvement, emphasizing the importance of discipline, love, and even understanding in terms of leading a fulfilling life. And the popular quote there is that life is difficult. This is great truth, one of the greatest truths. It's a great truth because once we truly see this truth, we transcend it. Interesting arguments right over there. And then you could also argue in terms of meditations by an interesting guy. I'll tell you something about him, called Marcus Aurelius. Yeah, interesting guy. A series of personal writings by this Roman Empire, emphasizing what they call Stoic philosophy, which I want you to think about in terms of the principles of self-discipline, reason, and even virtue. The popular quote there, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. I'm speaking to your soul, spirit, and body as I said. There's another one called The Road to Character by David Brooks, in terms of exploring the concept of character, in terms of development, and the importance of cultivating what they call moral values and the virtues in this materialistic world. The popular quote there that comes is what they call humility is freedom from the need to prove you are superior, at all the time. But egoism, on the other hand, is ravenous hunger in terms of a small space, self-condemnation, competitiveness, and distinct hunger. Find most of the things. You could also look at The Wisdom of Crowds by James Sorokin, in terms of investigating collective intelligence and even the ideas that diverse groups of people can actually make better decisions than experts or individuals, which reminds me of what? Of the Blue-Eyed People. Yeah, remember the Apollo team? Remember the Apollo team? Yeah, that made the breakthrough in terms of going to the moon. Yeah, they could probably borrow a lot of stuff from in terms of that perspective as well. So I'm going to give you, I promised to talk about my friend, my guy called Marcus Aurelius, who basically had a servant to remind him that he was only a man. I don't know if you know that story, but listen, he was an emperor. Emperor Marcus Aurelius was one of the most respected Stoic philosophers in history, and that is something that I want you to think about. He ruled the Roman Empire during the time of great responsibility and even stress, because he was so much loved or celebrated or worshipped by people. In order to maintain his humility and perspective, he had a servant whose sole duty was to follow him around and deliver a simple message. Every time it was being uploaded, the guy would whisper and say, "You are only a man. You are only a man." Tells us about our humility. And also, the lesson from this is that the importance of humility and self-awareness. Yeah. So, despite your elevated position, listen. Marcus was able to recognize that he was actually susceptible to the same human flaws and weaknesses that anyone can go through. So, having a servant to remind him of his humanity, aim to him to stay grounded and avoid becoming arrogant and detached from the struggles of ordinary people. Yeah, and this practice, in my opinion, underscores staying hungry, staying simple, staying humble. And so this is what they call the Stoic philosophy, that encourages self-examination, modesty, acknowledgement of your limitation. It serves as a powerful reminder that even in positions of great authority and influence, you should remain aware of your own fallibility and the need of personal growth and moral integrity. So, in my opinion, Stoicism is a philosophical school of thought that should, although originated in ancient Greek and later developed in ancient Rome, it's basically known in terms of emphasizing on personal virtue, on rationality, and even cultivation of calm and resilient mind in terms of facing whatever challenges. I'm going to give you some key aspects of what they call Stoic philosophy, and that's my argument and my emphasis really as takeaways for you mavericks. Yeah, in terms of number one, let's argue in terms of virtue as the highest good. Stoicism basically should emphasize virtue in terms of moral excellency. Yeah, and you must comprehend that it's a cardinal virtue in terms of wisdom that encourages you to have courage and wisdom in what you do. Another, what they call acceptance of what is beyond control. You should believe that some things are within your control, for example, thoughts, action, and choices, while others are not, for example, external events or other people's actions. So you must accept that what is beyond your control and then focus on what is within your control. And then there's what they call equanimity in the face of adversity. Stoics basically promotes what they call emotional resilience and teaches individuals to remain calm in the face of adversity. And it encourages what they call rational approach to problems, solving, and even emotional detachment from external events. Perhaps some kind of emotional intelligence of sorts. Yeah, we may talk about that. And then another aspect is living in accordance with nature. You have to live in harmony with the natural order of the universe, following reason in terms of guiding principles of life, which involves aligning one's actions and desires within what is rational and moral right. Perhaps the debate of homosexuality, of nature versus nurture. Those have years, let them listen. How about mindfulness in terms of reflection? Yeah, in terms of self-examination, in terms of mindfulness, in terms of important. So you need to practice journaling and even contemplating in terms of understanding your thoughts and actions to strive for self-development. Yeah, the argument of nature sinks a lot with me, because anything that's against the order of nature becomes what? Unacceptable. How about the aspect of universal brotherhood, the argument of Ubuntu Bulam, look for a book, Ubuntu Bulam and the law. They're interconnected, that Dr. King and even Bishop Desmond Tutu taught us. The idea that for whatever reason I cannot be what I am until you are what you are, we are inextricably bound. Even the argument of the economy of control, the Stoics, the economy of control distinguishes what is up to us in terms of attitude, in terms of action, as against what is against us. So you have to be focused on what you are in terms of what you're meant to be. So I'll give you examples of Stoics, people like Epictetus, for example, Seneca, and even Marcus Aurelius, whose meditations, as I say, becomes a famous Stoic text. So it's important in terms of ethics, psychology, and personal development, and becomes relevant today in terms of contemporary decisions on resiliency, on well-being, and the pursuit of a meaningful life. Yeah. So even as you live this journey, or you travel this journey of life, please embrace it in yourself. Believe in yourself that I have what it takes to be what I'm going to be. And I will encourage you, my friends, never quit. To remind you of another great orator, the great Winston Churchill, who was invited to give a speech in one of the universities after the war, because he was celebrated as war hero of sorts, and a great public speaker for all intents and purposes. And people gathered and brought everybody to come and listen, and people were like, man, let's listen to this great guy who's going to give a speech. And everybody was excited. And even professors, they came with writings, books and stuff like that. And he stood up on the podium and he said this. Everybody was waiting for probably he's going to talk maybe an hour or so. And he said, listen, never give up. And he sat down, and that was it. Listen, that speech has gone on in history, being one of the greatest speeches. Those 3 words could mean a lot in terms of your life, which reminds me another story of Churchill, when he was actually going to give a speech on BBC, and he had a task cab, it's very common in Europe, and the guy who rode him was, going with him, and he said, man, I better hurry, let's hurry, because I said, why are you in a hurry? He said, I want to go back and listen, because at 4 p.m., this guy called Churchill is going to be on BBC, and he's going to give us a speech. So I want to tune into my radio, because my car doesn't have radio, but at home I have this small radio, and listen to the great Churchill. And he didn't know that actually Churchill was the guy who was in the car, with him. And Churchill was impressed by this guy. He said, man, this guy is going home to listen to me. Beautiful guy, beautiful for all intents and purposes. And when he reached at the stadium, at the radio stadium, he actually, instead of paying £2 for the trip, he actually said, I'm going to give you £10. And the guy said, man, you've given me 10? Yeah, because I want you to hurry. And he was impressed. He didn't tell him exactly that he didn't disclose that he was Winston Churchill. And the guy said, well, aren't you going? He said, what are you saying? I'm not going back. He said, why? He said, why would I waste time to go and listen to this hopeless guy, Winston Churchill, when I can stay here and get another £10 from you? What a wonderful guy. Oh man, it broke Churchill's heart. Sometimes people will only celebrate you when they know that they have something that's coming out of your pocket. But listen, as we navigate through life, let's focus again. Be careful with people who applaud you. I would rather that you take constructive criticism from people who speak perhaps constructively about certain things about you, and you pick leaves out of them. So for us, what we do at Suigeneris, we are so focused on taking every comment from everybody, and sometimes they come in very funny ways, in terms of funny ways, as I say. Sometimes people throw you off a forum, sometimes people provoke you, sometimes people insult you, some people deliberately go against you, sometimes people, they do anything. But you see, we choose to pick the good things out of that, and they make us better every day. I think that's what Oprah Winfrey one time said, that failure isn't something that is bad, but it's a lesson or an opportunity for you to learn that I could do something in a much better way. So don't look at failure in the negative way, look at it in a positive way. So even as you comprehend, my friend, as a maverick, as you comprehend and as you struggle in your day-to-day life, focus on yourself, have that resilience in you, and never give up. Yeah, I think it was Dr. King who said, whatever task that lays in your hand, no, it was Bishop Amoza who said, do it to the best of your ability. Yeah. Dr. King said, because he was quoting someone, he said, if suppose you like to be a street sweeper, strip the streets like Raphael painted pictures, or like Beethoven composed music, or like Shakespeare wrote music. Do your job so well that the dead, the living, and the unborn couldn't do it any better. So God bless you. Greetings from Suigeneris. My name is Isaac Christopher Lubogo. Please find every book that you probably need, all our works at lubogo.org and suigeneris.com. God bless you. Let me take leave. Thank you so much for your attention. God bless.